Coaches, welcome to a brief presentation on seasons of competition. In Division II, our rules for eligibility are pretty straightforward. Student athletes have 10 semesters in which to participate in 4 seasons of competition. When we count up the number of semesters a student athlete has used, we are looking specifically at full-time terms. A student athlete uses a semester if he or she is enrolled full-time and attends the first day of classes, even if the student athlete drops below full-time after attending that first class. When we count up the number of seasons a student athlete has used, we look for any competition that involves an outside team. A single at-bat or one play in a football game will trigger the use of a season of competition. Of course, there are always exceptions to the rules. The following are exceptions to the use of a season of competition. However, please note that student athletes must be certified as eligible for competition prior to participating in any of these contests. For sports that have a non-championship segment, that's soccer, volleyball, baseball, and softball, student athletes may compete in the non-championship segment and not use a season of competition. You may also allow your student athletes to compete in an alumni game, a fundraising activity, or a celebrity sports activity, and not have that game trigger the use of a season. This is as long as the game is used as an exempted contest, and you should note that student athletes can only play in one of these contests and not use a season of competition. Student athletes who redshirted during the year and then participate in a foreign tour after the season do not use a season of competition. And finally, for freshman student athletes only, they may compete in preseason exhibition contests or scrimmages that precede the first permissible contest and not be charged with the use of a season of competition. Remember, this exception only applies to freshmen. One of the ways a student athlete may lose a season of competition is through participation in organized competition before initial collegiate enrollment. Several years ago, the rule was changed to allow high school graduates a grace year for organized competition before they enrolled in college. If a prospect continues to compete with a team for longer than 1 year, however, then he or she will be assessed a penalty. This penalty generally involves a loss of a season of competition for each year beyond the grace year a prospect competes, as well as the requirement that the prospect serve an academic year in residence prior to being eligible for competition. A 2-year or a 4-year transfer student may use a year spent at the previous institution to fulfill the residence requirement in those cases where this penalty has been assessed. Of course, there are a couple of exceptions to the organized competition rule. Someone who is serving in the U.S. Armed Services and participates in competition organized by the military is exempted. Also, prospects competing in various kinds of national or international competition may receive an exception from the rule for a maximum of 1 year. Competition that qualifies for this exception includes official tryouts and competition involving national teams, qualification for final Olympic tryouts, and such events as the Olympics, World Cup, World University Games, and World University Championships. Beyond the exceptions to the rules for seasons of competition and the 10-semester limit, there are waivers that can be used in certain cases. For seasons of competition, the most common waiver is the medical hardship. To qualify for a medical hardship waiver, a student athlete must suffer an incapacitating injury or illness that renders her unable to compete for the remainder of the season. In addition, the student athlete may not have already competed in more than 2 contests or 20% of her season. The medical hardship application is submitted to the MIAA conference office and then reviewed by the Faculty Athletics Representatives Committee. For these applications to be successful, it is crucial that all of the medical documentation from the time of injury through rehab and return to play is provided. One other note on medical hardships. When we deal with transfers who need to use a medical hardship waiver in order to extend their seasons of competition, we may have to submit the medical hardship application. Transfers from non-NCAA institutions must apply for medical hardships through Washburn. Transfers from NCAA Division I and Division III institutions, however, may use the hardship criteria from their institution or from Division II, whichever rules allow the greater likelihood of being granted. Another hardship waiver to extend seasons of competition is one claiming extenuating circumstances. For these waivers, the same 20% or 2 contest limit is still applicable, but the extenuating circumstances that may be claimed include the following: a life-threatening injury or illness to a family member that required the student athlete to return home, extreme financial difficulties such as mom and dad losing jobs so the student athlete has to help support the family, a dropped sport where the institution makes a decision not to sponsor the sport after the start of the season, and finally, a coach's documented misunderstanding of legislation, such as a coach playing a student athlete in a scrimmage after the start of the season, thinking that all scrimmages are exempted and not just those before the first permissible contest. In some instances, a student athlete will use up his 10 semesters but still have a season of competition to use. As you might have guessed, there could be a waiver for him. For 10-semester waivers, ones that are likely to be granted are those that show the student athlete being denied participation opportunities based on circumstances beyond his control. For instance, a student athlete who blows out his knee his freshman year and then blows out his other knee a game into his junior year. Here we can see that there are 2 denied participation opportunities based on medical circumstances beyond his control. Other situations deemed out of the student athlete's control include an illness or injury to an immediate family member, extreme financial difficulties, erroneous academic advice provided by an institutional authority like an academic advisor or the registrar, natural disasters happened to schools in areas hit not too long ago by Hurricane Katrina, and if a student athlete is otherwise eligible for competition and the coach decides to redshirt him during his freshman year. In all of these situations, the guiding concept is that the student athlete is denied participation opportunities out of his control. So if things like this happen twice to a student athlete, then there is merit in pursuing a 10-semester waiver. So that you can see what would not qualify, here's a partial list of those types of situations that cannot be used as the basis for a 10-semester waiver. A student athlete's decision to attend an institution that does not have her sport or where she chooses not to participate. Failure to meet progress toward degree or initial eligibility requirements. If a student athlete is on disciplinary suspension. A student athlete who is serving a transfer year in residence. And finally, a student athlete's reliance on misinformation from a coach. We would not be able to use any of these situations to justify denied participation opportunities in a 10-semester waiver. Okay, so that's all we need to cover for seasons of competition. Here is your situation and question. One of our coaches has a transfer who walked onto the team this year. The coach would like to save a season of competition for the transfer student athlete and so plans to redshirt him for the season. However, the coach is a nice person and wants to allow the student athlete an opportunity to play and knows that there are certain exceptions where student athletes can compete but not have it trigger the use of a season. Can coach let the transfer student athlete play in a preseason scrimmage without using a season of competition? Thanks again for your attention. Please be sure to email me with your answers so that you get credit for your continuing compliance education.